When Dorothy awoke, the sun was shining through the trees, and Toto had long been out chasing birds and squirrels. She sat up and looked around her. There was the Scarecrow, still standing patiently in the corner waiting for her. "We must go in search of water," she said to him. "Why do you want water?" he asked. "To wash my face clean after the dust of the road, and to drink so the dry bread won't get stuck in my throat." "It must be inconvenient to be made of flesh," said the Scarecrow. "For you must sleep, eat and drink. However, you have brains, and it's worth a lot of bother to be able to think properly." They left the cottage and walked through the trees until they found a little spring of clear water, where Dorothy drank, bathed, and ate her breakfast. She saw there was not much bread left in the basket, and the girl was thankful the Scarecrow did not have anything to eat, for there was scarcely enough for herself and Toto for the day. When she had finished her meal and was about to go back on the road of yellow brick, she was startled by a deep groan nearby. "Oh." "What's that?" she asked timidly. "I can't imagine," replied the Scarecrow, "but we can go and see." Just then another groan reached their ears, and the sound seemed to come from behind them. They turned and walked through the forest a few steps. Then Dorothy discovered something shining in a ray of sunshine that fell between the trees. She ran to the place and then stopped short with a little cry of surprise. One of the big trees had been partly chopped through, and standing beside it, with an uplifted axe in his hands, was a man made entirely of tin. His head, arms, and legs were jointed upon his body, but he stood perfectly motionless, as if he could not stir at all. Dorothy looked at him in amazement, and so did the Scarecrow, while Toto barked sharply and made a snap at the tin legs, which hurt his teeth. "Did you groan?" "Yes," answered the Tin Man, "I did. I've been groaning for more than a year, and no one has ever heard me before you came to help me." "What can I do for you?" she inquired softly, for she was moved by the sad voice in which the man spoke. "Get an oil can and oil my joints," he answered. "They are rusted so badly that I cannot move them at all. If I am well oiled, I shall be all right again. You will find an oil can on the shelf in my cottage." Dorothy at once ran back to the cottage and found the oil can, and then she returned and asked anxiously, "Where are your joints?" "Oil my neck first," replied the Tin Woodman. So she oiled it, and it was quite badly rusted. The Scarecrow took hold of the tin head and moved it gently side to side until it worked freely, and then the man could turn it himself. "Now oil the joints in my arms," he said, and Dorothy oiled them, and the Scarecrow bent them carefully until they were quite free from dust and as good as new. The Tin Woodman gave a sigh of satisfaction and lowered his axe, which he leaned against the tree. "That is a great comfort," he said. "I've been holding that axe in the air ever since I rusted, and I'm glad to be able to put it down at last. If you will oil the joints in my legs, I shall be all right once more." So they oiled the legs until he could move them freely, and he thanked them again and again for his release, for he seemed a very polite creature and very grateful. "I might have stood there always if you had not come along," he said, "so you have certainly saved my life. How do you happen to be here?" "We're on our way to the Emerald City to see the Great Oz," she answered, "and we stopped at your cottage to pass the night." "Why do you wish to see Oz?" he asked. "I want him to send me back to Kansas, and the Scarecrow wants him to put a few brains in his head," she replied. The Tin Woodman appeared to think deeply for a moment. Then he said, "Do you suppose Oz could give me a heart?" "Why, I guess so," answered Dorothy. "It would be as easy as to give the Scarecrow brains." true," the Tin Woodman returned. "So if you allow me to join your party, I will also go to the Emerald City and ask Oz to help me." "Come along," said the Scarecrow heartily, and Dorothy added that she would be pleased to have his company. So the Tin Woodman shouldered his axe, and they all passed through the forest until they came to the road that was paved with yellow brick. The Tin Woodman had asked Dorothy to put the oil can in her basket. "If I should get caught in the rain and rust, I would need the oil can badly." It was a bit of luck that they had their new comrade to join the party, for soon after they'd begun their journey again, they came to a place where the trees and branches grew thick over the road that the travellers could not pass. But the Tin Woodman set to work with his axe and chopped so well that soon he cleared a passage for the entire party. Dorothy was thinking so earnestly that they walked along, and she did not notice when the Scarecrow stumbled into a hole and rolled over to the side of the road. Indeed, he was obliged to call her to help him up again. "Why didn't you walk round the hole?" asked the Tin Woodman. "I don't know enough," replied the Scarecrow cheerfully. "My head is stuffed with straw, and it's why I'm going to Oz to ask him for some brains." "Oh, I see," said the Tin Woodman. "But after all, brains are not the best things in the world." "Have you any?" inquired the Scarecrow. "No, my head is empty," answered the Woodsman. "But once I had brains and a heart also, so I've tried them both. I would much rather have a heart." "Why is that?" asked the Scarecrow. "I will tell you my story and then you will know." So while they were walking through the trees, the Tin Woodman told the following story. "I was born the son of a woodman who chopped down trees in the forest and sold the wood for a living. When I grew up, I too became a wood chopper. And after my father died, I took care of my old mother as long as she lived. Then I made up my mind that instead of living alone, I would marry, so that I might not become lonely. There was one of the Munchkin girls who was so beautiful that I soon grew to love her with all my heart. She, on her part, promised to marry me as soon as I could get enough money to build a better house for her. So I set to work harder than ever. But the girl lived with an old woman who did not want her to marry anyone, for she was so lazy and wished the girl to remain with her and do all the cooking and housework. So the old woman went to the Wicked Witch of the East and promised her 2 sheep and a cow if she could prevent the marriage. Thereupon the Wicked Witch enchanted my axe, and when I was chopping away at my best one day, for I was anxious to get the new house and my wife as soon as possible, the axe slipped all at once and cut my leg off. This at first seemed a great misfortune, for I knew a one-legged man could not do very well as a wood chopper. So I went to the tinsmith and had him make me a new leg of tin. The leg worked very well. Once I was used to it. But my action angered the Wicked Witch of the East, for she had promised the old woman I should not marry the pretty Munchkin girl. When I began chopping again, my axe slipped and cut off my right leg. Again I went to the tinsmith, and again he made me a leg of tin. After this, the enchanted axe cut off my arms, one after the other. But nothing daunted, I had them replaced with tin ones. The Wicked Witch then made my axe slip and cut my head off, and at first I thought that was the end of me. But the tinsmith happened to come along, and he made me a new head of tin. I thought I'd beaten the Wicked Witch then, and I worked harder than ever. But I little knew how cruel my enemy could be. She thought of a new way to kill my love for the beautiful Munchkin maiden, and made my axe slip again so that it cut right through my body, splitting me in 2 halves. Once more the tinsmith came to help me and made me a body of tin, fastening my tin arms and legs and head to it by means of joints, so that I could move around as well as ever. But alas, I had no heart, so that I lost all my love for the Munchkin girl and did not care whether I married her or not. I suppose she is living with the old woman, waiting for me to come after her. My body shone so brightly in the sun that I felt very proud of it, and it did not matter now if my axe slipped, for it could not cut me. There was only one danger, that my joints would rust. But I kept an oil can in my cottage and took care to oil myself whenever I needed it. However, there came a day when I forgot to do this, and being caught in a rainstorm before I thought of the danger my joints had rusted, and I was left to stand in the woods until you came to help me. It was a terrible thing to undergo, but during the year I stood there, I had time to think that the greatest loss I had known was my heart. While I was in love, I was the happiest man on earth. But no one can love who has lost a heart, and so I am resolved to ask Oz to give me one. If he does, I will go back to the Munchkin maiden and marry her." Both Dorothy and the Scarecrow had been greatly interested in the story of the Tin Woodsman, and now they knew why he was so anxious to get a heart. "All the same," said the Scarecrow, "I shall ask for brains instead of a heart, for a fool would know not what to do with a heart if he had one." "I shall take the heart," returned the Woodsman, "for brains do not make one happy, and happiness is the best thing in the world." Dorothy did not say anything, for she was puzzled to know which of her friends was right, and she decided if she could only go back to Kansas and Aunt Em, it did not matter so much whether the Woodsman had no brains and the Scarecrow had no heart, or each got what they wanted. What worried her most was the bread was nearly gone, and another meal for herself and Toto would empty the basket. To be sure, neither the Tin Woodsman nor the Scarecrow ever ate anything, but she was not made of tin or straw, and could not live unless she was fed.